author of the BIM book for landscape, chair of BIM for landscape, chief operating officer of Built Environment. Stuff, I'm busy, do a lot of things. Bit of a massive geek, as anyone who has met me will tell you over and over again. So I've been doing a lot of reading about what's happening in terms of technology, what's happening in the world out there. What does it mean for us? We're certainly on the verge of a revolution in terms of what's happening out there and what's happening in our lives, and I just want to kind of go through some of the reading that I've done and see how it relates to landscape. So this is, I will not lie to you all, this is highly inspired by the book The Future of the Professions by the Susskind's father and son combination. I make no apologies for that, it's a great book and it's inspired me. Okay, so let's get going. Come on then. Right. So let's think about the profession of landscape architecture and landscape generally. So this does apply equally well to archaeology, ecology and arboriculture as well, this presentation. But I've kept it landscape specific because that's where my knowledge is. And this is a Landscape Institute presentation. So professions exist to solve a problem. Landscapes solve what should the designed landscape be. So in terms of landscape assessment, it should look a certain way, it should fulfill various social and ecological, environmental and obviously economic needs. And that is the ultimate purpose of the professions that surround the design and kind of assessment and analysis of the landscape. So that's what they are, that's why they exist. There are so many people out there, people off the street just couldn't just tell you the best way to do a visual impact assessment. This is specialist knowledge, and it's the job of landscape to deliver that. What else? The profession also controls what a landscape professional should know through the chartership system. We go through a kind of that chartership process where you have to do your courses, be trained to a certain level and have experience, and to do your go through your chartership process and then be in a final standoff as a chartered approved landscape architect. It goes equally well for every other profession in the built environment, particularly. So civil engineers have to go and do lots of on-site work, and they have kind of many years of that. Architects, designers, engineers, we're all doing it, and that is controlled by the profession as well. So there's a certain amount of control of what a landscape architect knows and what they do, and that is a part of our profession, is saying what is ours and what is not ours. This is what a landscape architect does, this is what an architect does. Of course the architects have the architects have the Architect Act, so that is nicely much more kind of protected than a lot of other professions are. But it's interesting to note how that relates to all the other professions in terms of there's this kind of professional tendency towards ownership of a certain set of skills that are developed. Okay, did I not have another one? And what should the landscape professional allow? I did have another one, there it is. There is a lot of expert witnessing that goes on in the landscape, archaeologists, ecologists. This is one of the areas where the kind of external aspect of the built environment is kind of particularly society friendly, I would say. We're generally, I think, held in higher regard. I don't think anyone would discount that than a lot of the other professions in the built environment, because we are seen to be bringing good things, greenness, ecology, environment, amenity, social function. And we have a certain amount of control over what is and what isn't allowed to be considered as a good landscape, for example, and that can be controlled by a landscape officer or a planning officer in a council, or by some sort of somebody working in a statutory authority of some description. So the profession doesn't just cover, you're a designer, this is what you do, go do it. But there is a problem. There are, in fact, many problems with all of the professions. This can be found in the book. Professions are inherently unaffordable. I don't know how many landscape architects have been asked, oh, you're a landscape architect, can you do my garden then? To which the answer is invariably, well, it's usually no. I like to say yes, but you can't afford me. but occasionally I do it for free because that's just how I am. But every profession is unaffordable inherently. We've gone through a lot of training. Our time costs money. It takes a lot of time to do what we do. So soon you're spending thousands of pounds, regardless of what it is that you're asking for of a profession, be it a doctor, be it a lawyer, be it a landscape architect or an architect. When you ask for services, you're going to start spending big money. That's just a fact. And that serves a small majority of the overall populace, and we can't get away from that fact. And that is a problem in terms of kind of long-term sustainability. We're antiquated. This again applies to all professions, so I'm not singling anyone out, and we all have been using paper for an awful long time. We've been writing things down, designing, doing things by hand, and a lot of people think that that's, an inherent part of the design process, but it's equally true of things like law, where there's a lot of case law to learn, there's a lot of studying to do. Medics, there's a lot of reading to do, there's a lot of practice, there's a lot of trials that you've got to go through, but ultimately it's basically based on a face-to-face visit, making up your mind what it is you're supposed to do, and then going away and doing it. There's this very kind of human, come into my office, we'll have a meeting, or we'll all attend a meeting, and then we'll all kind of try and work out what it is that we're doing. And this is another reason that we're unaffordable, is because we need lots of meetings to understand what it is we're supposed to be doing. So we're spending all this money doing things in a very archaic way in terms of the technology we use and just the way that we go about delivering our services. We're also opaque. Professions don't like to tell other people how they do their job sometimes, because that can be seen as giving away trade secrets. Some people want to self-aggrandize and say, I'm a fantastic genius architect and I can deliver you these amazing swirly buildings because I'm an architect and that's what I do and it's special. But that opacity leads to these sorts of unaffordable positions where you can't really afford these services of people who are, basically sitting in a room and, having a good think and a bit of a research and a bit of a discussion about what should happen, but ultimately not telling you how they come to their decision, so that ultimately when a decision is made, how does the client respond to that? Do they respond in an informed manner, knowing what was attempted, what the problems were that were being solved? Landscape architects do this all the time in terms of working with services, working with pedestrian flows, working with transport engineers, all these sorts of things. There's lots of interactions and decisions that need to be made, and it's really hard to communicate those on an A1 piece of paper that also needs to be pretty. And we're underperforming. And the reason is for all of those former three reasons. We're unaffordable, we're antiquated, and we're opaque. This is true of all professions, as I say. It's part of BIM has been trying to get this sort of getting standards in place, getting people to understand their position, when things are expected of them, what they're supposed to be doing. It's organisation, ultimately. But the reason for this lack of performance is because of all these these unconnected dots that we face every time we start a new project, of who's making this decision, when is this decision going to be made by, who owns that decision, who's taking the risk for that decision. All these sorts of things lead to a sort of professional I suppose reluctance to perhaps tread over the line with a kind of a forthright manner. And this isn't true of everyone. There are, of course, people who are willing to, go and stick their neck out and be brave, and that's great. But the world that we operate in means that it's probably sometimes less sensible to do that. And you need to be careful about what you promise and what you say that you can deliver, because you need to be conscious of all these other risks that you need to manage. Okay, so change. This is the future of the professions. There are two sorts of change. There's incremental change and revolutionary change. This has applied throughout time in terms of are we improving how we write? Are we using a slightly better quill? Are we using slightly nicer ink? Or are we developing the printing press? This is the difference between incremental and revolutionary change, and it happens all the time, and it's currently happening thanks to the internet, artificial intelligence, and a number of other kind of factors that have affected how easy it is to bring new services to market, mainly through the internet, but through better processing. But basically, it's all down to IT. It's changing all of our lives. Okay, so incremental change. This is how a landscape architect works. I hopefully am offending someone, but this is also in my mind. I've tried to whittle this down to the smallest amount of action. So we do some design, we do some analysis, we do some review of said design, said analysis, perhaps with our clients, perhaps with other people, perhaps just internally or with the project team, whatever. You know, there's a review process to make sure that the quality of the work is high. Then we print it, and then we submit it, and that's it. And that is, I've described an awful lot of design professions in those 4 lines. That is what we do. We do stuff, we think about it, is it right? Yes, it is, good, give it to someone. And then it's kind of out the door, great, next project, let's go. But it's a very incremental process. You have to go through these linear processes, and sure, you know, sometimes you submit, and it's not right, or it doesn't get planning, it needs to go back through this process, but it's still a very linear process, and it's something that applies to an awful lot of professions. Okay, so what's the difference between that and revolutionary change? Well, revolutionary change involves, certainly in our modern age, bringing online services, autonomous services, self-service, and free service. These are 4, or online, autonomous, self, and free are all very threatening things to us, to all professions. If someone can go online and do something, and it's free, or they could do it themselves, well, why get a professional? If it's if you can automate someone's job, then you won't do it anymore. That's why cars are mainly made by robots. Okay, so there's a certain amount of capability there in terms of what's happening. So let's have a look at some examples of these revolutionary changes. I'm going to do a bit of an alt tab. Okay, so we have WebMD. WebMD has millions of people through it every month, more in fact than go to any doctor in the USA in the same period, something like 190 million people. The Khan Academy, you can go on here and start learning. You can learn to code, you can learn to you can learn about maths, you can learn all sorts of stuff, and it's not the only one. The Harvard have their massively open online courses available for free. You can get certified through these sorts of things as well, which is, you know, a part of the landscape profession is education, and there is a movement towards this sort of just giving away a certain amount of stuff. Getting certification through this process is a little different. You know, it's not a bachelor's degree that you'll get, although, you know, people like the Open University, this sort of technology, this sort of online innovation of having just videos online, and you just go, I'll go and learn about China's civilization and empire, or I'll go do a postgraduate diploma in landscape architecture. I'll click on the link and give them some money, or maybe not, and then the problem's solved. eBay have the Resolution Center that channels through it a great number of things that would have otherwise, usually in a normal world, would have gone through the courts, and it's dealing with millions of people. And it's the volume of people that is kind of intense. That's what's changing it, is that people are coming out of the woodwork to start using these services where, you know, they wouldn't have bothered because it was unaffordable to, you know, oh, that guy sent me some dodgy headphones and it's 20 quid and I'm not hearing anything from him and he lives in Hong Kong, so I'm probably not going to get my money back. But through eBay, it doesn't cost me anything, and it kind of adds to their brand, so I'll just use eBay and they'll resolve my problem. So suddenly it's affordable, this service, it's accessible, there's clarity in how that's done. So how can this apply to us in our professions? Right, so I've done some quick Googling the other day. I'm going to create a garden design, there we go. just whack one out. Is it great? Is it right? No. But that's the nature of these incremental services, is that sometimes you don't start with the perfect tool, and this is by no means the perfect tool. I would not use this over AutoCAD. But AutoCAD does cost thousands of pounds. And there are alternatives. So Marshals have released various paving planner tools, for example, the garden visualizer. They are taking work away from garden designers, which is seen as unaffordable and kind of difficult to understand. You don't know what value for money you're going to get. You don't necessarily know if the design that's going to come in is in keeping with what you wanted. That sort of thing. This online service, which is free, kind of, because actually what this is doing is bringing you into the Marshals website. It's bringing you into closer to their products. So what they're doing is offering this online service and bringing you closer to their branding, bringing you closer to their products, which is a very, very clever move. And if you have a look online, you can see there's free landscape design software. It's not fantastically rated, but it's there, and that's the thing. This sort of stuff is pretty much a one-off cost. You have to develop your software, you get it out there. Of course, people like Autodesk like to update their software, Bentley too. Let me check, everyone updates their software, they keep making it better. But if you didn't, want to run a multi-million-pound landscape design consultancy and you just wanted your garden done, you wouldn't be massively fussed that there was free online tools. And this is kind of it's like the thin end of the wedge. It's a garden planning tool. Garden's not landscape, but it's part of the landscape, and this is a trend that we are seeing. So that's in terms of getting yourself free access to something, getting yourself I want to go out there, I want to teach myself coding, bam, I'll go to Khan Academy. I want to diagnose myself and be a hypochondriac, I'll go to WebMD. These things are out there, and they are increasingly out there because there is success and there is money to be made this way. So automation. I'm just going to show you a little video. Hopefully this will work. I'm sure Laura will tell me if it doesn't. I would like to apologize for this insanely cheesy music. Anyway. Okay, that's quite enough of that, guys. Thanks for that. So what are we looking at? Does this affect landscape? Of course it does. This is reducing the cost of installing a landscape. So it would be a massive problem to lots of landscape contractors out there. As they would see it, they would see themselves as being threatened by this. This is a tool that can come in and do their job. And oh, I was going to do it on the quiet. I'm going to do it on the quiet. And it can do their job. It can plant trees. It doesn't do it fantastically. It's just healing it in. It's just whacking in some. Well, what are they? They're in cells. But you could easily do this, with willow rods or all sorts of things. And the implications are that you could plant a lot more trees. You could plant a lot more trees quickly. Okay, they're not watering them in, so there's issues. But ultimately, 1 unit of this is going to cost a third of the amount to employ someone for a year to, chuck a spade in the ground and then chuck a little whip in and then heel it in. So the implications are there will be people whose jobs are replaceable by robots, will have their jobs replaced by robots, and the cost of installing landscapes, as I say, will go down. And does this mean there'll be more landscape or less landscape? It's hard to say because, if the budget's squeezed and we can do more for the same amount of money, does that mean we do more for the same amount of money, or does that mean that we do less for less money? So you've got to weigh up the balance. Of course, this is a trial by some university students here, and it's very much a kind of a work in progress, and it's currently manually controlled. But as I said earlier, with the kind of the fantastic garden design software, it's the thin end of the wedge. Once this sort of stuff gets critical mass, we'll be seeing a lot more of this. So how else does this apply? You've probably all seen this sort of thing. I'm going to start with the music on low because it's intense. Okay, I'm not even going to bother with that one. Okay, so building houses. Again, if we're reducing the costs, what are we impacting upon? We're impacting upon the jobs of the brickie who has to do the work. We're impacting upon the cost to the developer and then the cost to the client. So where building and housing is an issue, then what we can deliver is much better value. Of course, in China, there's been a number of innovations where you can now buy yourself a house for very little money, with the implication that people will just be able to just whack one out. Just, I just want a house, just get me one, and they'll bring it in. It's interesting here because what we're dealing with is the automation of design. Now, if we have a look at some professions and how automatable are these different jobs, they are varyingly automatable. So if we look at a bricklayer, how automatable is a bricklayer? It's very automatable. I mean, this is obviously, a bit of a finger in the air, but it's a repetitive job. It requires perception, it requires movement of the hands, and it requires kind of placing objects in place. What about architects? They don't have landscape architects. I checked. I'm sorry. I really am sorry, but I can't control that. So this is in a position where according to this, it's the least likely to be automated, and that's perhaps a good thing in our eyes, because that means that basically we'll still be in jobs. Hurrah! But is this still happening to us? Yes, of course it's still happening to us. There are lots of reasons to be concerned about automation, or to indeed embrace automation. So there are other jobs as well. Oh, I'm going to say that one. So this here, I'm just going to go through the video. This here is a surveying robot with GPS. I'm going to try and keep myself to the time. So this could go out and it could do ground penetrating radar. It can do a host of visual assessments, and of course there are already UAVs in use. So these sorts of tools, certainly for surveying professions, which landscape architects, ecologists, archaeologists, arboriculturists are all required to do. Is it putting us out of a job? No. What it's doing is it's providing us with a better way to deliver our services, where we can work remotely in multiple sites simultaneously, in case a courier needs to come and drop the robot off and pick it up again. But we can work in multiple places at the same time, doing work that's just as good. Will we get a sense of place? Will we understand the genus loci? Well, perhaps not. But is that what we're being paid for? I won't answer that question. Okay, so we saw here that, according to this, our sorts of jobs, the sort of design thinking jobs where there's lots of kind of synthesis and negotiation to do, is unlikely to be automated. However, it's not over yet. So I'm just going to play this through.
I don't know if anybody else is experiencing the same problems, but Henry, I can't hear the sound on this.
Okay, well, I will give that a break then. Basically, IBM Watson absolutely destroyed these people at Jeopardy. What is that showing? That is showing that there is a computer system that can listen, it can interpret real language, it can then perform real-time online research, and the information does need to be online. It can perform insane amounts of kind of web crawls and bring back the answer that it didn't know. It wasn't just sitting there in its hard drive knowing facts about Cretan archaeology, or at least that's what they tell us, but I do believe that it wasn't. It used its research capability and its ability to synthesize and read and understand to answer these questions. So whereas previously in the world of AI we may have been dealing with something that could not really tell if you were a human or not by your image, or couldn't really understand language, and there's nothing that's passed the Turing test that can speak with a human and fool us into believing that it's a human. But this sort of innovation is on the ascendant. It's the thin end of the wedge. These things are coming in and they are able to understand and synthesize knowledge. So how does this affect us? It affects us in a number of ways. So I'm going to go back to my presentation. So what do we do? Well, landscape designers have, on the left-hand side, we think about the environment, we think about people, and we think about the cost of what we're doing. That involves an understanding of topography of sites. It involves classification of different zones, as this zone is going to be, say, hard paving, or this zone is a master of this landscape character, which we've relied on people to do. It's about understanding views, so the views, say for an impact assessment, or the views of someone visiting a new school. And it also requires an awful lot of research. And that is that's what's changing, is that the capability to work out a lot of these things is going to be increasingly computable. So doing the research is going to become very computable. Classifying places is going to become increasingly computable. Working out how different levels, contours, topography works and making it comply with standards is going to become increasingly computable. Does that mean it's going to take over? I don't think so. I'm with the BBC on this. I don't think design and assessment and analysis roles are going to be taken away. But how we work is going to change. So we're going to need to change to respond to that. So we need to do that by becoming T-shaped professionals. We need a breadth of knowledge. We need a depth of knowledge. So our breadth of knowledge is about understanding the holistic picture of understanding what the values of people are, how this this work that we do interacts with society as a whole. That is kind of the horizontal, understanding what lots of other people are doing in the same world as us. It's about understanding how all the different software packages that other people use work so that we can efficiently interact with them. And then on the downstroke of the T, it's about doing our jobs really well and really understanding what it is that we're about and not these other things. So what skills does that involve? Well, it involves, on the one hand, on the left-hand side of the picture here, we have these kind of common skills, and on the right-hand side we have kind of specific skills. So understanding of how to use software, how to collaborate, how to manage our projects. These are all skills that we all need to have. And on the other side, designing, research and assessment, these are all skills that we also need to have. So research, I propose, is something that is going to become increasingly automated. Assessment has the potential to be at least partially automated in terms of understanding context of the site and how that interacts with creating risks of, say, if it's a certain type of soil, then that's a problem for doing, say, this infrastructure on it that will have this cost. But what really is going to change? What is going to change for the benefit of all of us? Well, it's this huge administrative burden that we all go through on a daily basis. We are replying to emails, we're attending meetings, we're writing lengthy reports, we're amending those reports, we're doing typos on those reports, we are producing as-built drawings, we're producing all these huge amounts of information and data that is actually secondary to the work. The work isn't drawing lines in CAD. The work isn't even drawing a line with a pen. The line is the byproduct, and that is the administration that is changing, and those are the things that are going to be affecting us. So it's automation, it's online services, and it's finding ways to kind of streamline what we do into just what we do, and that's the challenge that we all have to face. So we need to find these new ways to deliver online with this administration, be clearer, and we need to look at other ways of delivering our services, because in the long run, if we are replaced by a free online service, as a lot of other professions have begun to be, such as software engineering, such as some legal cases, etc., then we're going to have a problem. Okay, that's the end of my presentation. I've rattled through it there to get in on time. If there are any questions, I'd love to hear them. Otherwise, I will go ahead and have a cup of coffee. Lauren, over to you.
Hello, Henry. Thank you very, very much. So just to reiterate, guys, this is the part of the webinar where you actually get to ask Henry questions. So if you've jotted something down at the beginning or anything, do shoot it to me now. If, like me, you can only think of something an hour after everything finishes, then don't worry, because everything will be sent to you 24 hours later. I believe there's an automatic email that's sent out, and you can reply then asking myself, anyone at the Landscape Institute, or Henry a question, hopefully related to this webinar. But if not, don't worry. So we've got some questions in the box now. So I will ask, the first one is from Claire Thirlwall. Hello, Claire. Oh, wait, that wasn't a question. That was just to say she couldn't hear the audio. Fantastic. Cool. Oh, she said, thank you. Thank you, Henry, for that presentation. That's great. So, oh, and Simon Adele has come in to say that he has tweeted some of the presentation URLs that Henry put on there. So that's really, really handy. And as always, guys, this will be recorded. This has been recorded and will be put up on the YouTube channel sometime next week, so that you can share it with colleagues or friends, or watch it again if you just couldn't remember something that we said. So if you do have any questions, please do put them in now. Otherwise, we'll let Henry go off for the day. So I'll just give you one more minute to get them in, because I know we've got a bit of a delay today. So,
There was a bit of a delay, right?
Yeah, there was a bit of delay, yeah. And also just to remind you that because they're all recorded, you can not only find them on the YouTube channel, but they are all saved under the presentation headings on the webinar page on our website. So you can go back and watch and listen to all our old webinars that span quite a variety of topics now. We've had some good ones. It's been going since last September now. So Claire asks, what one thing could we do to make our profession less antiquated?
I suspect Claire knows the answer to that. We should be using digital tools. There's one. Digital tools. I don't want to say the B word. I'll say the B word. BIM. Should be doing BIM. It's all about BIM. I am a BIM guy. I would say that. But honestly, what one thing could we do? We at the moment, there's that kind of diversity between an incremental improvement and a revolutionary change, and we're So I'm going to suggest incremental improvement. It is certainly necessary. I think we can continue to hone and refine our services. But looking to the horizon, I think it is, who knows, it's future gazing. I'm going to do it anyway. It is only a matter of time until somebody comes along and totally revolutionizes how landscapes are delivered in a way that we haven't perceived. That goes from the quill to the printing press. It's that sort of sudden change, that accessibility and that kind of ability to be much more profuse. So incremental improvement, follow BIM workflows, use your tools better, collaborate more effectively. And if you fancy yourself as an entrepreneur, I can't wait to see what comes out in the next few years in terms of kind of amazing ways to design differently and to enable more people to get in touch with landscape design.
Yep, absolutely. And just plugging the digital. So if you follow @Talk Landscape or our head of technical and professional @li_Simon O with an O on the end, so Simono, and he puts up lots of horizon scanning things on Twitter. So, and obviously that is the way forward. We keep ourselves up to date to the second with things like Twitter. So if you follow the right things, then you'll hopefully be kept up to date. Rob asks, can you give us examples of ways to diversify, Henry?
No. Okay, so diversification is complex in my mind. That is a question for us each to ask ourselves, I would say, because the way that landscape design is delivered to people is very much part of a kind of a staged, linear procurement process. It's very controlled, and those sorts of controls are very slow to change. So diversification of your existing skills is one thing, and diversification of kind of new applications of your creative skills is another. So diversification of your existing skills. If you could make your skills available online, low cost or free, or somehow find some way of reaching a wider audience, I would argue that that is diversification in a sense, and you could do that through collaboration with the landscape, people, landscape contractors or nurseries and that sort of thing. Bringing the supply chain together, so that when they come to you, they aren't buying a designer, they are buying a landscape. So that's kind of diversification. In terms of the T, that's kind of vertically. It's being owning more of the value chain, as I frequently like not to say. So the other way is about finding new ways to apply that creativity. So there are an increasing number. I mean, I'm literally pulling this off the top of my head because it is the sort of thing that, new markets. I would never have dreamed of Uber. I would never have dreamed of Twitter or social media. These are the sorts of things that I don't know. I don't know what will happen until it happens. But there are lots of places that can't afford design services because they're charities or because they're an individual. Finding ways to penetrate those markets. Finding ways to work in the online world. There is a large amount of, there's an increasing number of 3D worlds out there that I think would benefit from landscape design. That is literally the most far out thing I've ever said. Usually that's just for my kind of quiet time to think about designing landscapes in 3D worlds, but we're already doing that. So we're creating these 3D artifacts, and then they become something real.
Absolutely. Claire asks,
but why couldn't they stay as something virtual and be more useful in that sense?
sorry,
Sorry, Lauren.
No, that's fine. We got the digital overlap there. Clearly, we haven't caught up with modern technology. So Claire asks, why do you feel our profession is opaque?
I think it's. I think landscape architecture. Why is landscape architecture opaque? I think it's because of the artifact of landscape design. So the artifact of landscape design is what is produced. Is that a landscape? No, it's a series of drawings. Perhaps it's a 3D model, but it's often not. So that's quite opaque. You've made, as I was kind of saying, you've made lots of decisions on the way to coming to a subjective assessment based on research and objective knowledge and learning. But there is opacity in why this area is of this character and this area is of one character. Sometimes it's very clear, but sometimes it's not, and you need to make a judgment. But it's those numbers of decisions that it makes it really hard to channel into that. And what I'm suggesting is that in the future, the design process itself will be more transparent. So we will, those decisions will be logged, as opposed, not by kind of an administrative process of I have decided that this should be a fall of 1 in 20 because that is what is required for disability. Not that sort of transparency, but people would be able to look, and that sort of information will just pop out. So I think it's about sometimes we're not using 3D, for example. In a 3D model, it's suddenly transparent that that thing that you designed in 2D doesn't work the way you thought it did, because 2D and 3D aren't the same thing. So that's what I mean by opacity. I'm not talking about the sort of self-aggrandizing opacity that often exists in terms of kind of people. Oh, you must go to me because I am the man that knows, or the woman that knows because I am the expert. Come to me. I'm talking about just it's really hard to daylight these things. So that's what I mean by opacity.
Thank you. I think yeah, some difficult questions being put out here, but hey, we don't like easy ones, so that's good. Right, if there are no more questions, and you've got until the time it takes for me to stop saying this and then for the lag to catch up, to put any more in. Otherwise, thank you very much, Henry Fenby-Taylor, for a wonderful presentation, and we'll catch you again at the next webinar. All right, everybody, so have a good afternoon, and we'll see you next time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Lauren.
You're welcome.